Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, we saw that all that is here is Ishvara. After having said that, the topic then was, how does it change your life? Okay, is it just like an information of, okay, all that is, before I didn't know and now I know, so now tick mark, okay, this also I know. Is it like that? It has to change life. So that is what he says, what? Mat karma krut, mat paramaha, mat bhakta sanghavarchitaha. These are all the implications. The minute you begin to understand the presence of Ishvara, it necessarily has to change the way you deal with the world. Right? So we saw all of that. Karma krut, mat paramaha, mat bhaktaha sanghavarchitaha we saw. Now, Matthias had a question about what are these 9 Lakshmis. So that's why please don't live with this idea of I have to kind of somehow, you know, I think Gabby was almost talking during the coffee time, that, you know, this thing, these terms that we use have a very specific purpose, Mithya and Maya. And I see people using it so loosely, and along with that loose usage, there is some kind of a dismissive feeling about it. And with that dismissiveness goes your whole opportunity for growth. And all these verses of the Gita, which are again and again and again talking about, you know, mat bhakta bhavaha, you just skim through. Mat karma krut bhavaha. It's not my creation. Gita says it again and again and again and again. After the nature of Atma came the whole topic, what? How to live with this vision. Different aspects. Then there was a topic of Ishvara. Again comes the topic, how to now incorporate the presence of Ishvara in your life. What do you do differently now than what you did before? Besides just using 2 words, Mithya and Maya, to escape things. So therefore, this is an incredible means of knowledge. You have to use it, your mind has to become subtler and subtler so that the meanings of these words create real meanings in you. And they begin to percolate your being 24/7. And therefore, these are all the verses which require as much attention. In fact, I would say more attention than the final reality, which is a function of how much you have worked on yourself now, based on this. Both. Actually, you don't need one over the other, you need both. You need both, but you can't give over-importance only to one and then, you know, relegate the second thing at a secondary place. Now, these Lakshmi. So there are Ashta Lakshmi, as I told. Then, what are the Ashta Lakshmis? Dhana Lakshmi, the wealth, as we understand it. It could be what? The money, or it could be stock. Nowadays, you have, it can be, right? The other forms of physical wealth that we create, that represents dhana. Dhana represents all the grains and the food. Then Gruha is a good home, good quality home, where each one cares for the other. Each one looks into the eyes of the other and talks and tries to understand. So that is also Lakshmi. To be born in a home like that is a blessing. Then Santana Lakshmi. What is fourth Lakshmi? Santana Lakshmi means that when you have kids, it's not only, it's wonderful to have kids, but it is even special, super special if you have good kids. So any kid is a gift, but if you are able to see this human being grow into a beautiful, sensitive, intelligent human being, what a gift. So that is what we call Santana Lakshmi. Then there is Veera Lakshmi. Veera Lakshmi means that the wealth is about courage. So that means fear is something which is quite common to all of us. But the ability to overcome the fear is also given as a potential in this order. You helping yourself to overcome the fears, it makes you what? Somebody who is courageous. So that means they don't just overnight get erased, the fears, you have to work on them. So when you have the strength and courage to conquer, we are not only talking about the courage to conquer the outside world. Now Gita is all about what? Knowing the nature of I, and for which you have to prepare the mind. So that means you need the wealth of courage to first accept certain things that are there and then to deal with them. Even though it is painful, you need to do it. That is what we call Veera Lakshmi. Then Gaja Lakshmi. So that the goddess of power and strength. So that means that we feel that we are weak human being. We feel, and you have the power also to overcome that. So the power and strength is given to you as a potential and you have to collapse it. But your power and strength can sometimes, if you don't understand that it is a blessing from Ishvara, you can become what? Arrogant. So how do you learn to enjoy your power and strength and at the same time not become arrogant when you bring in Ishvara? So I'll just give you some small examples left a lifetime of impression in me, because it told me a lot. And most of it comes from my interaction with Swamiji. So initially, when I have a little curious mind. So when I was going to Swamiji's class, and I was this young, 22-year-old girl, full of questions and full of curiosity. So everything that I asked, everything that he said, I really thought about it. It's not like I just was asking questions. But, it's difficult. Vedanta is not easy, so I had many questions. So I used to ask him many questions, and one day he told me, he said, "You are really smart." So I said, no, Swamiji, where am I smart? He said, "Why are you saying no?" He said, own up. Own up your strengths. If we think that if I say to myself that I'm smart, I will become what? Arrogant. This is how we think. So that's why we continue to keep ourselves what we call humble. Then he said, you can say, yes, I'm smart, but you can at the same time say that I thank Ishvara. I didn't create my brain. I thank my parents who encouraged me to think. I encourage all my ancestors for whose genes I'm carrying. I thank all my teachers who made me think through things. So that way you acknowledge your strengths and see the contribution of everybody else. Then you become somebody who has a healthy self-image and at the same time not arrogant. So that means neither you can, if you really, the growth is neither you can have a low self-image, oh I'm nobody, oh where am I smart. This is my self-message to myself. That's why I'm saying it. And he made me change that message to myself. The contribution that he had in changing the landscape of my mind was incredible. So many things he taught me, so many, it's just countless. Small things, but they are big. So therefore, this messages, your messages to yourself have to also change. That is when you begin to have what we call healthy self-image. You want healthy ahankara. You don't want to destroy ahankara. Ahankara can never be destroyed because it's a part of the Ishvara's design. Your sense of I, which is part of the brain, you have to make it healthy first. And this is what we call, and that requires courage to what? Overcome all our tapes, and that is which Lakshmi, the power you have, not only you must have courage, you have power, you are given the power and strength to change it. So that is called Gajalakshmi. All this wealth is given to you as a potential. You have to collapse this potential and ask for blessing of Lakshmi. Ask for it, because it will not come overnight. You need help. Then the next, Vijaya Lakshmi, goddess of victory. So that means you can try and you can try, you can be highly powerful and you can have a lot of courage, but the end can be very sad. Right? You have all these great emperors who, all these Napoleon and Alexander the Great, and all these people, lot of power, lot of courage, they are people, they are not just ordinary people. In the end, what? What is the end? They are defeated. They have their own glory, but then there is a decline. So you don't want your life like that, just one little peak and then a decline. So you want your life to be a victory, Vijaya Lakshmi. A victory doesn't mean that you'll get everything that you want, but your victory has to be defined by what? How much are you growing? How much you are coming in touch with the realities? How much are you improving the quality of your living and contribution in this world? How much are you operating from clarity? So that means this will make your life series of victories. And you need help for that, which is called Vijaya Lakshmi. And finally, it is called Aishwarya Lakshmi. Aishwarya Lakshmi means there are some, Aishwarya Lakshmi literally means Ishwarasya Bhava. What does it mean? That that person is given a slight measure of what Aishwarya, like being like Ishvara. Who are these people? There are some people who are outstanding human beings. They shine. And they are remembered not only during their times, but way after. Everything that I am speaking about, where is it coming from? From Adi Shankaracharya's Bhashya. When did he exist? I didn't even know. If he has all these modern dates, I don't even know what that is. 800. He existed then, and today not only I'm speaking about it and you're all listening to me. This book of Gita became this much with commentaries of Adi Shankaracharya. So when we are talking, we are not only talking about just each word and its translation. There is a whole big knowledge base, which is not created by me. So that means these are what we call Aishwarya Lakshmi. Aishwarya Lakshmi means a few people. The nature of the contribution they have is outstanding. Panini, what he did for Sanskrit grammar. Then it's not only in this, anywhere. Right? Albert Einstein changed the paradigm of physics, modern physics. Artists. So recently we were in Paris and was going and seeing all this Monet Museum and all the Impressionist art, and what artists they were. Brilliant. Aishwarya Lakshmi. Today still when you hear Mozart, it does something to you. The harmony. His ability to capture the harmony, sound harmony. Aishwarya Lakshmi. So that means all these are wealth. And my teacher. And this is what we have to, first of all, whatever resources, talents, skills that we are endowed with, we have to be thankful for that. We have to be thankful to all the others who contributed us in what? Growing our talents. And the nature of participation that we have is, we express all these wealth that we are endowed with freedom. So that Ishvara blesses us more with the talent. That's when you become a person that begins to shine. And that shine that you carry within you is not out of Chanel makeup. That is that shine which in Sanskrit is called Brahmavarchasam. Brahmavarchasam is a shine that you have in your face out of your clarity. It's because you have dealt with the confusions in the mind. You have dealt with certain emotions, the unconscious, all of that, and your buddhi is more and more alive to the realities. You carry a certain presence. And that presence is called, given a name, Brahmavarchas. So therefore, this is what this Lakshmi does. Now, let's move. Nirvairaha. What is the last word in this is Nirvairaha, and that is really beautiful because Vairasya bhavaha is Vairaha, and here it is negation of that. So the sense of animosity. So that means animosity also like hatred, or it may not be hatred or animosity, but it can also turn into what? Resentment. Right? Over a period when somebody does something to you At that given point in time, you may be angry, or you may think that this person is mean or carries certain animosity. But over a period of time, what happens is it turns into resentment. You resent. So one important meditation that I think Surya made you do, which also our teacher used to make us do. He, on one of the first days he told you what, bring some unpleasant situation in your life. Why? Because even though that situation has gone, it may have what remained in you in form of resentment. And that resentment, as long as it is there within you, it will make you a dissatisfied person. So you have to learn to what? Deal with that resentment. So in a way that you think of any person, how do you know that your resentment is gone? So when you mentally picture that person, generally what happens is the person towards whom you have resentment, what? There is a certain discomfort you feel, just even by the thought of that person, not that the person is in front of you. So that means you are carrying this person. So the processing has to be to the extent when you mentally visualize this person, it doesn't evoke any what? Strong emotions in you. That's when you can say you are free from it. It's not that you convince yourself, oh, that person was wonderful. You don't need all these artificial things. You also don't need to say that, oh, you know, I have to let it go. No, it's okay. And also, you can choose not to be close to that person. That is also fine. It's fine. It's not like you have to be the best friends with the whole world. Not necessary. But the thought of the person, if it invokes in you, that means it has not, that external person has entered you and is not yet left. So there is a very beautiful verse in the Gita which says, Bahyan sparshan bahir krutva. What is that? The keeping the external world external. The external world is external. Why is Lord Krishna saying that? Because even if the world is external, we carry what? The impressions for longest time in our memory. But those memories are not just photo frames, they are loaded. That's what causes resentment. That's why it results in resentment. So that means, nirvairaha means, whoever you are resentful against, you have to settle account. For yourself, not for somebody else. How do you settle account? The same method. You begin to understand there are different things. First is understand that that resentment that you felt at that given point in time is okay. You couldn't do anything better. But now you can re-look at it. And in that re-looking at it, you first say what made you feel the way you felt. But then after having acknowledged and validated that, you have to at times shift to the perspective of the other human being. This is called Pratipaksha Bhavana. Pratipaksha Bhavana means you now try to see the same situation from other standpoint. Actively. Then what could happen is you begin to see the totality of the situation and not only from your perspective. So I had a cousin and both her parents were doctors, and they were going from morning till evening because they were very busy doctors. And she always felt as a child as a left out child, who was left alone. And this, she said, now she has 3 kids, but she says, I still feel that thing of my parents left me alone is still back of her mind. So then I said, after having acknowledged that, you have to see the whole situation from the parents' standpoint. What is parents' standpoint? They were not actually leaving her alone. They were just what? They were busy with their lives and they had to earn money and they were doing what they were doing. So, as a child you were not able to see it, but as an adult you can see it. That partial vision has to be shifted to what? A more fuller vision, taking into account what? Every other perspective. When you begin to do that, you begin to see the totality of the same situation and not only your perspective of the situation. Now, suppose in this case the parents were nice, so it's not a very difficult thing. In case the parents were really not nice, that is also a possibility. In this case, you have to then acknowledge that, but also have to see their helplessness. That they themselves were like that because of some experiences they had from their parents. Then their parents were like that because of their parents. Then their parents were like that because of their parents. Who are you going to blame and who are you going to have resentment against? You have to see the order of everybody's helplessness in some way. And in seeing that helplessness, you have to let go your resentment. So, this is an important step. This is when you become Nirvaira. And sometimes you can pray for yourself to help you to come out of it, and you can also pray from the others because they are also suffering. And you have to pray. So that means that resentment you have to what? Through your proactive action, you have to convert. Convert to what? Healing yourself and also praying for the well-being of others. So that their confusion goes. You don't know when, but at least you can pray for it. So, that is what we say, Nirvaira. So now when you've done all of this, Mat Karma Krit, which is what? Performing, keeping me in mind when you perform actions. Mat Paramaha, I am the ultimate goal that you want to get. No oneness with me. Sangha Mat Bhaktaha, constantly connecting, seeing your connection with Ishvara. Sangha Varjitaha, what? The ability to deal with every object without that neediness or dependency. And Nirvairaha, free from resentment. Then, Yaha, that person who is like that, Sa Mam Eti Pandava. That person gains me. To this person, I what? Lift the veil of ignorance. And he comes to me. Comes to me means the equation is solved. In the buddhi, which is equipped with all of this, the equation is solved. So, yaha sa mameti padava. And when you know Ishvara, you also know what? Yourself. Because your truth and Ishvara's truth happens to be one. It's not knowing Ishvara as some entity and then coming to union with it. It is not like Swamiji used to say, amoeba entering a big body of your body. It is like a jiva entering this big body of Ishvara. That is not the union. It is understanding that all that is here is one. So that is what he says, Saha Mamiti Pandava. Now, Lord Krishna knows that all these things, before they happen, it takes time. So the next verse is, Atha Chittam Samadhatum Na Shaknoshi Mahi Sthiram Abhyasa Yogena Tataha Mamekam Dhananjaya. Here he says, if you are not able to do all of this, right, and keeping all of this in mind, he says, what? It's okay. It's fine. He understands that also. So therefore he says, but abhyasa yoge tataha. So that means that from one day to the other, you can't bring about all these changes. It takes time, it takes effort. It is like you are trying to make the seed grow into a tree and you want it tomorrow. Will it? It takes its own time. But you can't then say, oh, it takes its own time. You have to do what? Watering. You have to do that part. You can't forget to do that part. So that is what is called abhyasa. Abhyasa means constant repetition. And the mind is such that it will go back to its habitual thinking. This is the nature of mind. It can't be reprogrammed. It's not like, this computer which is affected with virus, and then what? You clean up the virus and you reprogram the computer, and then what? It's gone. You can't do it like that with the mind. This is what he says. It will essentially go back to its old habits. And what you have to do is softly and gently bring it back to this teaching. This is called abhyasa. Abhyasa means it's a repeated process. It's not overnight. So therefore, as I told you, there are kind of three functions of the mind. No? One is emotion, the other one is what? The manas, the other one is buddhi, and the third is what? Chittam. So suppose you have a sharp cognitive capacity, intelligence. What can happen is you can actually follow all the logics of Vedanta pretty easily. If you're sharp, you can follow the logics. But what can happen is, so that means your understanding has become quite advanced. But the emotional life has its own what? It doesn't base, the emotional life that you have is not based on logic or anything. It has its own stories. And the impressions of the childhood and the impact it is carrying within you. So that means what can happen is that on one hand you feel, a lot of people tell me that when you are explaining I do understand many things, but when I go out, I go back to my patterns. And that's okay. And that is how it is. Your job is to what? Every time your mind goes again back to this old habits, what do you need to do? Bring it back. Bring back the vision. but not the so-called final vision, I am Atma, I am Atma. Bring back the corresponding vision and you correct it. This is what we call Abhyasa. The more and more and more you do it, the old habits will give way to new way of being. And this is where you have actually what? Changed with your effort, your quality of your mind. And this is what is said by Abhyasa. So that means that is what Atha chittam samadhatum na shaknoshi maistiram. If you cannot be steadfast in bringing all the different aspects of Ishvara and living your life according to the rest, it's okay, Abhyasa yoga. Through the practice of this again and again bringing back to your vision, you will certainly reach.
It's like bringing it's like using the mind to help
yourself.
The emotions.
Exactly.
If the mind is sharp, then use that to.
Exactly.
But the mind who is informed by
The vision.
The vision.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this is contemplation, right?
It's not necessarily called contemplation. It is, contemplation is when you're sitting and thinking about things. Here, when, for example, somebody says something that you don't like, so that means there is a normal habit of the mind to what? Either feel, it depends upon how you are. Now, some people are like, to take everything totally personally and suffer like anything and keep thinking about it for like next 10 days. That is a habit. There are some other people who have a habit of when you think that somebody said something inappropriate, you just, what? Hit back. This is habit. Now, what you have to do is, you feel like hitting back, if that's your nature, you have to stop. That is called Abhyasa. But when you have to stop, you don't just be passive and say, okay, now I should do something. Passivity, as we saw, is not some big virtue or anything. When you stop, then you think, what is an appropriate response in this situation? You need to think through. Right? And anger may not be the appropriate response, but passivity also may not be the appropriate response. So you need to learn to communicate. But communicate in a way which is non-violent. What is non-violent communication? You don't start by saying, oh, you are so hurtful. You're so mean. How can you do this to me? You still can say what you said, what made me unhappy. It's a statement of fact. What you felt is 100% fact. Because that's what you felt. There is 100% truth in it. But you're like that may or may not be the truth. Because that person may have had some totally other intention. So that means when you speak, generally what happens is we don't know how to communicate. We only think that we can communicate all easy things. Anything little difficult, you feel, oh, let's avoid communication. Because by avoiding that communication, you think this situation will disappear. But it doesn't. So therefore, the communicating the things, but wisely. And in that wise communication, part of it is drawing your boundaries. Drawing your boundaries means you cannot let people abuse you also. You can't let people just take you for a ride because you are a kind, good human being. because you're trying to be a kind, good human being with Vedanta. So that means there is a pattern that you have which is either being passive or being aggressive. You have to break free from both these patterns. And you have to learn to do what you need to do and do it well. That is not called contemplation. It is called breaking free from your habits. Habitual behaviors. So this is what is called abhyasa. And when you do it over a period of time, slowly, 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 you begin to transform as a human being. Now, Arjuna. Arjuna vacha prakritim purusham chaiva kshetram kshetrajnameva cha etat veditum ichchami jnanam jneyam cha keshava. So now Arjuna has been quietly listening to all these things, but what is also happening is during his time, see, Arjuna was a well-informed, well-educated human being. He was not some illiterate person. So he had little bit dabbled in philosophy and he knew some terms, but he didn't quite know how those terms apply to, because Lord Krishna was not using those terms. So how those terms that he had heard in philosophy apply to this particular what Lord Krishna is teaching. So he asked Lord Krishna a question, what is Prakriti and what is Purusha? This Prakriti and Purusha are the terms which are used in Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya and Yoga philosophy use this term, Prakriti and Purusha. So now he wants to figure out what Lord Krishna is saying, where does it stand with reference to what some other philosophy, where all these terms are used. So that's his question. The other one is Kshetram and Kshetrajna. The field and the knower of the field. And then the third question is Jnanam and Niyam. What is knowledge and what is the means of knowledge? So Lord Krishna has to now relate this whole teaching with reference to these terms. That is what we call a master teacher. It's not like, oh, I didn't study it from my teacher, so now I have to go back and refer. Not like that. If you know the teaching, you can use this and you can figure out. Now, in this, what I have done, since these are selected verses, I have not taken the answers from Prakriti and Purusha, the Kshetra and Kshetrajna, but there is one given section which is very beautiful, which is what Jnanam and Niyam. That I have taken certain portions of that. What is knowledge and what is means of knowledge? So now, the means of knowledge, what is a means of knowledge can be replied in two ways. One, you can say the means of knowledge is what Shastra, which is the pramana, the means of knowledge, which through the words give you the knowledge of Atma. He could have replied it like that, because literally speaking, Shastra is means of knowledge. As we saw before, I have to remind you that you yourself, no matter how intelligent you are, cannot figure out what is said in the Gita. Because the subject matter of Gita, which is the nature of I, nature of Ishvara, nature of the universe, and the relationship between all three is not available through what? The means of knowledge that you have. What are the means of knowledge? As we saw few classes ago, the basic means of knowledge that we have with us, the two most important is perception and perception-based inference. Perception is necessarily of objects, and inference also is based on perception. Therefore, through this method, you can't come to know the answer to these questions. This is why we call Shastra Apaurusheya. Apaurusheya means not created by human mind. Now, that could be the answer, right? What is the means of knowledge? You can say Gita, Upanishads, they are means of knowledge to know the nature of reality. But he doesn't answer the question like that. In the means of knowledge, he again starts talking about all the values, different values that you must have in order to gain knowledge. How many times he keeps coming back to what? You and improving the nature of your relative being. So these are some beautiful values. There are 20 values which are talked about at this time as Jnanam. I've taken one verse which has quite a few values, so let us see that. Amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsa kshantirajvam acharyopasanam shaucham sthairyamatma vinigraha. Beautiful values. One is amanitvam, the first. Mani is the one who wants to be respected, and manitvam is the status of being the one who wants to be respected, and amanitvam is absence of that. So what does it mean? The person does not seek respect from others. Now this is something, the absence of conceit, where you feel that everybody has to look at how intelligent you are, how smart you are, how beautiful you are, how successful you are. That kind of a thing is, you don't need it. Now, where is this manitvam come from? Where first of all, there are quite a few people who are arrogant. And who are these people who you think are arrogant?
Ignorant.
Yes, we belong to one category called ignorant. But you are not arrogant when you are a beggar. You see what I mean? Generally. So,
Successful people.
exactly. This phenomena of arrogance comes from what we call a success, right? So that means if you get this, if you get into, and that happens at a very young age. You get into a good school, right? Then you go to the right kind of colleges. Then you have the right kind of jobs. And then you have the right kind of neighborhood in which you live. Then you have the right kind of cars. That makes you what? It gives you what? A sense of achievement, and that's okay. But along with that achievement comes what? Some arrogance.
And you also need to have the belief that you're the author of these achievements. And it's your merit.
Exactly. This is what refers to what Swamiji was referring to. So you start thinking, I am this coolest cat. There is nobody like me. And sometimes people have this very overt arrogance. Sometimes people have very subtle arrogance. And the subtle arrogance can be still quite a bit of arrogance, and that is what we call intellectual arrogance. I see so many times. People who come to Vedanta, there are quite a few people who have this intellectual arrogance, if they are beginning to understand something. Or sometimes the intellectual arrogance can only also come as long as you tell me what I already think, you're right. But if I begin to tell you something which contradicts your thinking, then this teacher doesn't know anything. So that means you have come to the class with a certain position of arrogance where you think what that teacher is right if the teacher tells what I think is right. So then actually you've not come to learn. You have only come to what? Check out the teacher if the teacher knows as much as you do. These are very subtle arrogance that we all carry. Not, but it's true. So that means that this arrogance you can cultivate over a period of time, both physical arrogance and subtle arrogance. Now, the thing is, how do you make this money person a money? Not by just giving him a lecture, oh, you should not be arrogant. That doesn't help only. So that means you need to re-understand. And that re-understanding involves the fact that all, as I told you, that every achievement that you have, you become a CEO. Great. How many people have contributed for you to be a CEO? How many? Are you the only one? No. Your mother has spent countless nights not sleeping and looking after you. Your teachers have taught you things. Your friends have helped you. When you were down, your friends were there for you. Your university professors challenged you and made you work really hard. You got support of your boss and your colleagues to reach what? This position of being a CEO. So that means how many people contributed for you to be who you are. Interconnected world. The more and more you see their contribution, which is a fact, the more and more you will what? Not be arrogant. Because in fact, not only not be arrogant, but you will be thankful. Have gratitude. That grace. So much of Rumi was also about grace. So much about beauty. So he was a very evolved person. So therefore, the more and more you have gratitude for things, less and less you are naturally arrogant. Naturally. Effortless. Now, what you need to understand is also something, another thing. It is in your self-interest not to be arrogant. Why? Because even while you are a CEO, for the success of the company, you still need participation of people. Not only to get there, you needed their support, but even to be successful in your present position, you still need support of others. And somewhere along the line, if you have become arrogant, nobody likes you. Because in your presence, you always carry this sense of superiority, which makes others feel that small. And whenever any individual feels small, you think they are going to give their best in the job that they are doing? You never can. So therefore, when you make others feel small, naturally what happens is their participation is not optimum. And when their participation is not optimum, what is going to be the future of your company? Are you going to be a successful CEO? When your company is not performing so well because people are not giving their 100%? So that means not only to get where you are, you need support of people. To remain where you are, you equally need support of people. And the more and more you recognize that, more and more this false arrogance will begin to disappear. And you will become a Mani. Sometimes what will happen is, if you are a Mani, not only you have arrogance, but you want what others to treat you in a certain manner. And you think that always everybody else will treat you in the manner that you want them to be treated, as some VIP. They may do it out of fear if you have a position, but they don't really care for you much. And they may have their own issues, that they will not always get the treatment that you think you deserve. And you will always be disappointed. So that means, if you understand, being Mani, not only there is a lot of ignorance, but also it doesn't pay for me. Two things. In the long run, it doesn't work. It goes against my own self-interest. Then it will be naturally dropped. Adambhitvam. What is Adambhitvam? Mani is the one who is arrogant based on one's achievement. Dambhi is the one who wants to project oneself in a certain way, which is not even true. So that means there is pretense. So the one who is, Dambha means in Sanskrit, Dambha means pretense. So that means you are showing yourself to be a lot more than what you are. The other one is what? For whatever accomplishment the one really has, wants to be recognized and feels that I'm great. The other one is showing more than what one has. That is pretense. So now, this pretense is something that is, there are a lot of people who project themselves as people who are rich, who are wealthy. I was in Paris, and one of his cousins told me that there are not WhatsApp, but what is, not Facebook, but what is that other thing?
Instagram.
Instagram. So in Instagram, people post like, their life, right? So they show some big house they have and big car and some fancy restaurant they went to, and some beautiful vacation they had. And he's a young man. So he says, you look at all this and you said, oh my God, my friends are having some kind of a soap opera, Bollywood, Hollywood life. And I'm shitty sitting here, going to work, I'm struggling with my boss. So he says, it's so dangerous because people project themselves as, some kind of a soap opera Dallas, some star. So therefore, that is what his cousin was telling me. So he says he stopped looking at Instagram and the fancy lives of people. So that means it's not that they really have that life. They are also equally struggling. Then that's why you see Facebook. You feel, my God, people are living among all the people they love. This nice pictures with their family. And within that family there is so much struggle. You don't see any of that. And so that means there is a certain amount of prasad that we all carry within ourselves. Trying to be happy, good, cool people, when inside there are a lot of things which are not resolved. So now, how do you become somebody who is non-pretentious? Sometimes you think, sometimes you think that when you say such certain limitations of yours, you become what? Weak. And people will not accept you. So that's why there is some kind of a projection. Because actually this wanting to project yourself in a better light comes from your need to be recognized by others. And that happens at a very young age. The need to be recognized by others. So there was see, for everything I give you a simple little example so that you see it's really true. So a friend of mine, her daughter was invited for a party, young girl of some 5 or 6 years old, and the birthday party. And just few days before the party got cancelled. So my friend, she just called the mom of the other friend to find out why the party was cancelled. So the mom is telling her that my daughter feels ashamed to show our place. She goes to some kind of an elite school, and in that elite school there are all rich people. They have fancy homes. So when she goes to birthday parties of others, they have all fancy homes. And her house is okay, nothing great. And she feels her friends will not accept her if they come to the house. She's ashamed of showing the house. So now, this is that everybody else and what they have naturally will make you feel inadequate. Over a period of time, there are people then who just kind of a little bit, change the facts. That becomes pretension. So therefore, what happens, especially in Bombay, the neighborhood where you live is a stamp for how wealthy you are. So that means when somebody just asks you a question, where do you live? It's not a simple question of just curiosity. Through that question, they are just trying to place you where you belong in your social status. and you sometimes see this, the faces of people changing the minute you reveal your neighborhood. So that means, then what happens is, a friend of mine, she used to tell me that she used to live in Bombay, let's say, this east, they were in the same suburb, the east side is little inferior than the west side. So she gave the name of the suburb right, but just changed that little factor. And that is not because she wanted to fool others. It's not that she wanted to lie. It's not that she wanted to cheat. It is all because, what did she actually want? Self-acceptance. Wanted to be recognized as somebody. So therefore, this is the need. That the need behind pretense is mostly not that you want to actually actively be deceiving to others. It all comes from a certain sense of inadequacy. When you don't have a good self-image, you rely on others' approval to make you feel good. That is the problem. So the minute you recognize that my need for pretense actually comes from what? I want to be accepted through others. Then what you have to also then recognize is, nobody will ever accept you as exactly as you are, because they have different values. The most critical thing is what? For you to accept yourself. If for your self-acceptance, if you keep on relying on others to accept you, it will never happen. So that means you need to then work on your own self-acceptance. Your self-acceptance, if you have worked on, you can be like Gandhi, who goes to a round table conference in his dhoti. They create a standard of suit and boot and that decorum. But you don't have to be in that. You are your own person. And still when he enters, the people get up. And still when he talks, his voice is heard. So that means you have to become that person who is strong. Strong because, how will you become strong? By what? Working on all these values. Seeing your connection with Ishvara. So that means, as you begin to become strong, the pretense begins to be what? Naturally, you don't live for others. So when we were in Paris, there was this guy who, he is a management consultant. So he was exploring the possibility of working with us. And then I said, we don't sacrifice traditional Vedanta. We can present it in a modern style, but we can't change the content. So he says, yeah, but the CEOs may not accept your content. I said, I'm not interested in pleasing the CEOs. My life is wonderful without them. But if they want to learn from me, I'm very much willing to teach. But if you ask me to change my content to please somebody else, no way. You have to be clear. Not that, oh, great, some CEOs are going to come to me. Oh, great, let's just change everything. is the difference. You're not opposed to it, but you are not what? Your life doesn't become, your pursuit doesn't become dependent upon what pleases others. You do what you believe in. That is, will naturally make you non-pretentious. Then, ahimsa. What is ahimsa? The word ahimsa means non-violence. Now, by non-violence, we mean non-violence in three ways. Through thoughts, through words, and through actions. Now, non-violence through your thoughts means every time you are building up a story which is against somebody, you have to what? Begin to check the facts in that story. That is how you stop your mental violence. Now, also when you have opinions, you have to make sure that your opinions are enough nuanced enough where it represents reality. So that means any place you go to, let's say in any place that you go to, there will be some positive aspects and there will be some things which are not right, and that's perfect. For example, I will give you an example. Every year we do a retreat in Rishikesh, and the ashram where we do the retreat is on the banks of Ganga. Now, the participants who come and they look at this Ganga, basically there are two different types of reaction. There are some people who say, "Oh my God, it's so dirty." And the other person will say, "Oh my God, what a beauty." What is beautiful is not only this beautiful river Ganga in the foothills of Himalaya. What is also beautiful is the way people relate to this Ganga. Every morning these villagers who live nearby, they are not some spiritual or anything, they are just simple people. They come and they do namaskara to this Ganga, they worship the sun, they take the water, they put it on themselves and they go. There is a certain relationship that they have with the river. So that means the mind, which is only trained in seeing what the dirt and the pollution and look at this, she did this, she put soap, that you're only caught in that. I'm not saying that we should ignore it, no. But we need to begin to see what the total picture. That is when we become nuanced. Nuance means our opinions are not based on what just one little observation and that occupying what the whole thought process and the whole mental picture. So this is why when there are foreigners who come to India and they see both sides, I love that, because there are some people who see the chaos. It's not something that you have to know positive thinking. It is chaotic. But you don't stop there. In and through that chaos there is a beauty. And that beauty, if you don't have the subtlety, you miss. So that means you have to create that mind which is able to see the totality. In that totality, this is a part, true. Otherwise, your thoughts, your opinions become violent. You see, with a person who's always seeing problems and complaining and all, who likes to be with that person? You also feel down. But the person who has a little spark, who is able to see problems, it's not like ignoring problems and someone disconnected to the world, not that. The person who is nuanced becomes very interesting and also good for your mental health. So that means thought violence means also you need to check what you are beginning to believe. Then what speech? Speech violence is sometimes you say things and you don't know how much it can hurt others. So that means when you begin to be thoughtful about your speech, then that is what the Vak Tapas. It's called Vak Tapas, where you use non-violence in your speech. So as I told you, not aggressive speech of the tone of blaming, but at the same time talking about what you have to talk. This is what we call the verbal non-violence. Then you have a non-violence in action. The action towards other living beings. And that is, for the longest time, we have lived with what? A certain amount of arrogance, where we think the whole world is meant for us to enjoy. If you live with this vision of the world, that the world is meant for you to enjoy, then what? You try to manipulate the world to the maximum extent so that you can enjoy increase your enjoyment. If that is the way in which you live, then what will happen is you will be thoughtless. Like this person cutting the tree because his van could not go. Or animal, go fishing. Let the poor fish die, but it's enjoyment for me. That day, when we went to this the barefoot park, and they didn't want to eat in a cafe because they were serving what? All the wild. What were they
Wild
serving?
animals.
Wild animals.
Years.
Deers.
Yes.
So that means, hey, these creatures are there. What? Their life is what? Nothing. It's all meant for me. Himsa. Unnecessary. When you have options, see, one thing in Himsa is that you can't, nobody can follow Ahimsa to the absolute. Not possible. No matter how, can you now, if I tell you, don't have any violent thought against anyone ever.
That's pretty violent.
Exactly. I'm going to give you a very hard time by telling you that. Exactly. I'm violent. Absolute ahimsa is not possible. But that violent thought, when it comes, either you make it like like it's a seed, then you either water it and make it big, or you just say, okay, that's there. Now, how do I choose to act? Wonderful. Even in your speech, sometimes, even if you take enough care in speaking in the right manner, it will create hurt in somebody else. You can't totally control it. So absolute himsa is not possible. Even for your food, when you eat certain vegetarian food, you still create some harm. It's not totally non-harmful. So that means total ahimsa is not possible. But total ahimsa is not possible also then doesn't mean you use that to just do whatever himsa. You have to minimize it. Your participation in the world has to be in a way that you minimize any hurt to any other human being. You have to become conscious of that. Unnecessarily you need not harm things. And when you are not thoughtful of that, then there is a consequence also. That is how law of karma is. So this is why, see, the consequence is not like some karma and all, don't think some, so much of, now so many people I hear that they have cut down on red meat, not because they have love for cow, but because it creates some health problems in them. Cause and effect. So that means this actions and consequences. And the least you harm your environment, either through thought or through words or through your actions, to that extent your participation in the world is an intelligent participation. And the world will respond to you correspondingly. And that ahimsa is 110. So I have to stop. Do I have time for 2-minute story? Or not?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, just 1 2-minute story. That I saw when, that how the extent to which you can be thoughtful of others. When Swamiji, once he came to Bangkok when, for a UN meeting, and we lived there, and he had a heart attack, so he had a bypass, and he was stuck in the hospital for 3 weeks. So we were with him during this time. And after the surgery, he was in pain. And every time he was in pain, when you love somebody and he's in pain, you feel that you should call somebody. So just always say, oh, call the nurse, I would think. He said, don't call the nurse. So I said, why, Swamiji, you are in pain, why not? So he says, the nurse is very busy. She has many things to do. I can handle my pain. I don't want to keep calling her every time. I can deal with my pain. When you're in pain, if you can think of somebody as your Lord. Not unnecessarily inconveniencing others. Unnecessarily. That is a fine mind. Then one day he told me, there was one other nurse, and he told me after she left, that I saw some sadness in her eyes. Let me talk to her and let me see what I can do to help her. And you're recovering from your whatever angioplasty. And your attention is not like me. And I'm the guru and everybody should come and serve me. But what? Helping others. That is living a very high sensitivity to ahimsa. my presence should what? Create more and more contribution and less extraction. Ahimsa, life of ahimsa. And this is why he said, when you take sannyasa, one vow you take, and that is ahimsa. I will try my best to cause least harm possible to any human being. So, ahimsa. Shantihi, we will see at 5. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.